Okay, good afternoon, all the speakers and all the participants. We're glad to be here and, have the opportunity to virtually meet, especially during this challenging situation. So, welcome, and I hope all of us is in the healthy conditions. And before we started, I will read
Kita akan membacakan
the code of conduct. The code of conduct that I read will in Bahasa, but you can all see it on the screen. The admin already shared the code of conduct meeting. So first, pertama, pastikan perangkat komputer, laptop, ponsel tersambung internet dalam keadaan stabil. So make sure your device, computer, laptop, or mobile phone have a stable internet connection. And second, yang kedua, nama akun disesuaikan dengan format nama underscore stakeholder, government, civil society, private sector, academic, or others saat bergabung pada room meeting. Yang ketiga, peserta dimohon untuk nonaktifkan mikrofon saat kegiatan berlangsung. Keempat, peserta diharapkan tidak keluar atau masuk room meeting. Dan kelima, peserta diharapkan mengaktifkan kamera dan memasang virtual backdrop yang dapat diunduh dari chat box. Jadi, that's the code of conduct in this meeting. I hope this code of conduct can help us to give a productive discussion room. So, okay, and next, the admin will play the bumper of the session. Okay, so once again, thank you for all the speakers that be able to join our discussion, our classroom today, and also all the participants. Thank you very much for the time. And this session is part of the initiative by Policy Research and Advocacy, or ALSAM, and also collaboration with the Forum Asia. And this topic, we will focus to discuss about how we define Hello. Yeah. So this topic, our session will be discussed about how we defining human-centric cybersecurity during pandemic COVID-19 in Southeast Asia countries. So we have like representatives here from several countries in Southeast Asia and also representative from several multi-stakeholder. So I hope this discussion will be rich with the ideas and also to yeah. Uh, Hello, I think the connection is quite on and off here suddenly. Um, yeah, so uh, before we started, I will introduce all the speakers and I'll start with yeah. We have one of the speakers here, Alia. Alia Yovira is a researcher at the Institute for Policy Research and Advocacy, or ALSAM. ALSAM is a civil society human rights organization in Jakarta. Her work at ALSAM focuses on the connection between human rights and technology. Alia earned a law degree international law from Udayana University, Bali. So, hello Alia.
Hello, everyone. I hope my voices can be heard. Hello, everyone. Am I audible? Sorry.
Hello.
Hello, am I audible now? Okay. So sorry for the internet connection. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here today.
Hello everyone, I'm so sorry. My internet connection is suddenly when we start, it's on and off, even though I already online for 1 hour before the event. So yeah, maybe that's the internet, also the internet problem that we can discuss as well in this discussion. So yeah, but hopefully in the next 2 hours, this connection is friendly for us and we can really discuss about interesting topics. So what did I miss? I introduce Alia, and next maybe I can invite Rachel. Rachel Arini have a more than 10 years experience in the regional diplomacy, human rights gender and sexual rights. She is currently the East Asia and ASEAN Advocacy Program Manager in Forum Asia. Previously, she worked with the ASEAN Parliamentarians for Human Rights, the ASEAN Pacific Research and Resource Center for Women, or ARO, and AWID, AWID. For her many contributions in the region, she has been appointed as the United Nations Youth Advisory Panel, Frida, Young Feminist Fund Advisor, Women's Fund Asia Advisor, and ARO board member. So we're lucky as well to have Rachel here. Hello, Mbak Rachel.
Hello, Lita. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, and next we have Profited. Wow. Profited is Professor Emeritus at the Faculty of Law, Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok. He is graduate of Oxford University and University Libre de Brussels, especially in Europe. He is also barrister at the Law Temple, the Middle Temple, London. He has helped the UN in a variety of positions, including member of UN Secretary General Civil Society Advisory Board on the Prevention of Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, member of Committee of Experts on the Application of Convention and Recommendation ILO, independent expert on UNESCO Advisory Board for the Global Education Monitoring, representing the Asia Pacific region, member of Advisory Board, UN Human Security Fund, member of Advisory Board, UN Voluntary Fund for the Technical Cooperation on Human Rights. On the human rights issues, he has held a number of UN posts, in particular the following: the UN Special Rapporteur on the sale of children and child prostitution and child pornography, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, UN Independent Expert on the protection against violence and discrimination based on the sexual orientation and gender identity. And in 2021, he was appointed by the UN Human Rights Council as a UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Cambodia. So we're very lucky to have Profited here. Maybe we can give some insights regarding the issue of minorities groups and also the situations in Cambodia as well regarding to the big topic cybersecurity. So thank you again, Profited, to join us today. And next, we have Mr. Andy Mbayuni, from member of Facebook Oversight Board. So Mr. Andy is an Indonesian journalist who served as chief editor of the Jakarta Post daily newspaper from 2004 and 2010. And he is a current serve as a senior editor and board member of Jakarta Post. He is a co-founder and executive director of International Association of Religion Journalists. In May 2020, he was named inaugural member of Facebook's Oversight Board. So, hello, Mas Andy.
Hi everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry I'm not in Bali. I'm in Jakarta. I wish I was in Bali, but good to see you all.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Andy. We're all here in our place. And last but not least, we have Ms. Nursalini Saleh. She is an administrative and diplomatic officer, where she holds a position as an assistant director in the National Cybersecurity Agency, National Security Council Malaysia since 2010. And she is currently responsible for cybersecurity policy and international cooperation. Her current work involves the drafting and developing of national cybersecurity policy, studying on applicability of international law in cyberspace and cyber crimes, as well as implementing the awareness program and initiative on the cybersecurity at national level. So hello, Salimi. Very nice to virtually meeting you, and we're lucky to have you here. And I hope we can learn so many things or discuss many things with Salimi here.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you too. Wish that I could be in Bali as well.
We hope we can stay in Bali now, but yeah, hope. Thanks God we connected by the internet, even though sometimes on and off. But yeah, anyway. So I think I already introduced all the speakers, but not myself. So I am, my name is Lintang, Blandina Lintang, and currently working as a volunteer in Purple Code. Purple Code Collective. Purple Code Collective is a feminist club, feminist collective to mainstreaming gender in the technology sector, and I've been become researcher in the technology issues since 2015. So yeah, I'm happy to moderate all the speakers here, and maybe I can learn as well so many things from the speakers and the participants as well. So yeah, so we have around, maybe right now we have more than 1.5 hours to discuss how we define the human-centric cybersecurity during the pandemic. We all know that, yeah, the pandemic forced us to transform digitally, especially maybe in the middle of the access internet itself in Southeast Asia. I guess the internet access also still a problem in several Southeast Asia countries. Maybe we can take a look to another sessions in the CIGF, but currently I think cybersecurity, we have to give more spotlight for the cybersecurity issues, since everybody connected to the internet right now, because yeah, the lockdown policies forced us to transform digitally. Several activities we have should be yeah. Hello.
Yes, Linda.
Yeah, hello. I'm so sorry again, the internet connection. So the objective of this session is we want to identify the key issue on the cybersecurity in Southeast Asia and how it affects to democracy and human rights situation in Indonesia. So yeah, we agree that currently we really depends on the internet, like me right now, really depends on the internet connections. But sometimes the concept or the scope of infrastructure, it's only limited to the physical infrastructure. But But in this session, we want to expand more. The scope of infrastructure is not only limited to the physical infrastructure, but also how we define, how we develop the core value as a foundation when we build when we build the infrastructure, and make sure that the internet ecosystem that we rely on is a safety place. And that's why we try to mainstream the human rights centric approach in the cybersecurity field. And hopefully this session will give us any ideas to how we develop the human-centric approach, and to make sure that the technology is give us more agency rather than exploited by the technology. Because related to the data, just yesterday Indonesia have a data breach regarding the health system. So maybe one or two speakers can highlight more about the current situation. So without further ado, I will invite, because this talk, this session will be like a talk session. So I will first want to invite Rachel to give us a regional overview, pandemic situations, and its relation to the cybersecurity issue. Maybe you can share the challenges from each Southeast Asia country, and then I will ask Prophet and Alia also Salimi. Well, please.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Lintang. Hi everyone, my name is Rachel, and then Forum Asia is a regional human rights organization. We are a membership-based organization, and currently we are operating in 21. We have members across 21 countries in the region, and since February last year, we actually documenting the impact of pandemic to human rights. The impact of pandemic to human rights is surely severe, but we actually highlighted 4 trends, which is very relevant for cybersecurity. First of all, definitely the emergency decrease exacerbated human rights violations. In Southeast Asia, majority of the countries have introduced an emergency decrease or law in addressing this COVID-19. However, if we learn from the AIDS pandemic, because COVID-19 is actually not the first pandemic that we have experiences, over-criminalization is definitely not effective, and human rights approach is essential to address the effective response on health crisis. And because of the vaguely defined emergency decrease for COVID, we see how the principle of necessity and proportionality are not being upheld, which is not aligned with human rights principles. And this definitely impacting online expressions and also online associations. Individuals who speak out are being accused of inciting public fears or public chaos because legislation targeting fake news on the pandemic has been used in countries like Cambodia, Thailand, and Indonesia. We also see how the emergency laws addressing COVID-19 have affecting social and economic divide. In majority of countries in Southeast Asia, we see added vulnerability faced by migrants, refugees, women, LGBTIQ, which also culminated into widening digital divide. So that's the overall view. And then the first trend that I want to share is actually the absence of privacy rights and data protections. We see that the region have a very lax data protections laws and non-democratic government. So the mismanagement of data and the wide scale of surveillance pose significant risk for human rights defenders who are already being targeted. We also see that majority of the government use the contact tracing applications, which is necessary, but WHO actually issues 17 principles on utilizing digital tracking for COVID-19, and we don't see it being upheld because as per Lintang said yesterday, there was a data leak from e-hack apps of Indonesia. We also see how infringement of the rights of privacy have not been adequately met in Peduli Lindungi, Trace Together, and China applications in Singapore, Thailand as well. And these actually affecting the second trend, which is the attacks against dissenting voice and human rights defenders. Key findings from our recent report, Defending in Numbers, which looking at the human rights defenders' status in Asia, found that human rights defenders face unprecedented challenges in 2019 and 2020. These challenges include cyber attack, doxing, and data leak as well. And until now, no countries in Southeast Asia region has laws or policies to protect human rights defenders, which is very concerning. The last trend that we also see is the rise of digital authoritarianism. We definitely see how laws and policies institutionalizing online surveillance are controlled as well as mainstream in the regions. And this is starting with the contact tracing applications. We also see how across the regions, government create regulations for granting authorities overly broad powers to regulate online content, access user data, and penalize companies that fail to comply. This can be seen through the Ministry Regulations 5 and Virtual Police in India, National Internet Gateway in Cambodia, the proposed cybersecurity bill in Myanmar, the draft cybernetic law in Timor-Leste, etc. We also see the rise of digital authoritarianism taking into place in our sub-regions because internet shutdown are normalized, especially in the context of coup and crisis. And this is happening in Myanmar as well since February until now. The last trend that we see is growing concerns on cross-border surveillance. We see how the exchange of surveillance information are being carried forward by governments and lack of protective mechanism, infrastructures, and regulations to prevent this might pose upcoming challenges for human rights. So to close my in sharing about the trends that we see in the regions, we want to share that the government response to COVID-19 pandemic will definitely have long-term impact on human rights and human rights freedom. And we don't want this pandemic become the entrance of the race of the surveillance nations because we don't have any parameters or transparency with how data gathering will be used later on. However, I also would like to have more discussions in this forum to share about what kind of recommendations that we can provide to making sure that human rights angle are at the core in the creation of cybersecurity norm in Southeast Asia region. So with that, I will give back the floor to Lintang and happy to have further conversations with other speakers and participants. I'll close with that and thank you so much, Lintang.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It's a very comprehensive that you share about the several countries in Southeast Asia, and maybe I will invite Profit to give us maybe additional situations or perhaps the cases that faced in Thailand as well, or several countries that you focus on as well. So maybe we will have 3 until 4 minutes, and then we will have Alia and Shalini as well to share about these same questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Can you hear? Okay, fine. I'd like to build on what Rachel has just given as an overview of the region, and then perhaps look at it a little bit more from the business sector, the platform perspective, and then look at perhaps the claim of fakery, fake news and the like, and how that interrelates with the region at the moment. So first of all, the general overview, I would just note that what COVID has done has been to increase the accumulation of executive power, the consolidation and potentially maybe abuse of executive power. Why? Because most countries use special laws, emergency decree over here, or maybe in your country. So we have to be very careful with that in terms of accumulation of executive power. Secondly, the medical lockdown as a means of containing COVID has also coincided with a political clampdown in many countries. And the tools are often very much linked. In this country, the main tool is the emergency decree. It's not a statute, it's not a parliamentary law, but it's a decree that was evolved giving power to the executive. And that covers both COVID as well as clampdown on freedom of expression and association. So this twinning of lockdown and clampdown is a worrying concern that we have to expose and counter. And thirdly, we note that with COVID we have seen weakened checks and balances in the sense that it is the executive power which prevails very often, and it's not questioned very much by Parliament even at times, and the courts, together with a shrinking civil society space, which means that it's more difficult to act as a check and balance against executive power. So those are three common features of many parts of this region and elsewhere. As a fourth issue, I wanted to raise this phenomenon of newish laws on cyber security and cyber crimes. And you note that Thailand now has a cyber security law. Cambodia is drafting a cyber security law, and Myanmar was thinking about it until quite recently. And so it interlinks a bit with the subject today, because what do we understand by cybersecurity, and how might it be misinterpreted or misused as a notion by the state authorities on the one hand? So when we look at the term cybersecurity, I think if you look at the sort of Google dictionaries, etc., you probably find that the indication is that it's about protection of our computer system, data, hardware, software, from unauthorized and or illegal attacks. So my computer I would wish to protect by having antivirus program, for example, in the most immediate sense. But when it interlinks with the state as a law, and the state then claims that it has to protect itself from attacks, then there's a big issue, because what the state claims as an attack might actually be the exercise of various freedoms on our part, such as freedom of expression, our comments, our posting of ideas and opinions, which the state might claim as an attack on its own cyber system, so to speak, computer and data and the system around it. And we have a new law in Thailand, a cybersecurity law, which is a very broad law enabling the authorities to confiscate computer system where the computer system is seen as a possible risk to state affairs, including the state's own computer system. And there's a certain linchpin in terms of state action because there's a notion that if it's an extreme risk, to national security in the eyes of the state can take action without going to the courts, without having a court warrant, take action against those, including the other person's computer system, seen as threatening the national security under this extreme threat notion. And if that's the case, can you imagine the shudder that goes through the business sector? Why? Because this law means that if the state claims that a certain threat might be coming from a billion-dollar multinational enterprise based in Thailand, which has a computer system which might be seen as a threat to the cybersecurity of the state, then there'll be huge sums involved in terms of potential actual detriment, including confiscation of billion-dollar data from the other side, the business side, and as well as the taking of the both hard and software from the entity, including business sector, seen as threatening the national security as part of the state's understanding of cybersecurity for the state itself. And that's a very state-centric approach, of course, and that's what we're questioning. But Thailand now has this law. It's not implemented yet, but it's there. It's there. And side by side with that, another law in Thailand, quite interesting, which is a better law, is the Personal Data Protection Law. And I think the messaging for us is we should go for the Personal Data Protection Law rather than a cybersecurity law that is basically a law protecting what the state sees as its own security rather than human rights-based security linked with humans that we're talking about now. So that's the situation, and Cambodia is also drafting a cyber security law at this point in time, and that is something that we are very concerned about. And as an additional fifth introductory comment, we should also be very careful in times of COVID, before and after, about this flurry of different laws and policies that can constrain freedoms, particularly freedom of expression, freedom of association. I was at an internet forum this morning concerning a certain country, and we can note at least 5 laws that can be used in the internet era to constrain freedom of expression as well as assembly. Too many laws, over-legislation, and too much power to authorities. First of all, criminal law, often used against freedom of expression generally, including incitement provisions or national security provisions within the criminal law. Secondly, you might have press law, telecom law, which can also block or impound internet or otherwise. Thirdly, you might have a specific internet law that can censor content as well as block. Fourthly, this new phenomenon that we note, which is the Internet Gateway Law, whereby service providers and others have to go through one gateway which can switch on and switch off in terms of flow, shut down or open in terms of flow, and right through the authorities gateway as the monopoly of enabling us to have access or not online. So it's both content constraint as well as access constraint generally. And then the fifth phenomenon is to have a cyber security law, which targets more the issue of attacks on computer systems and the like. But as I said earlier, the Thai experience is that it's really more to do with how the state sees national security in protecting itself, rather than, I'm talking about my computer system here being protected by having an antivirus software, for example. So that overabundance of legislation policy is something that we should be very careful about. And that's the first take on the relationship between us and the state through this phenomenon of COVID, as well as over legislation, as well as all the dangers of over use of national security and the like. The second scenario that I wanted to leave with you is, what do we expect from the business sector? And that's going to be linked a little bit with the discussion later, but I just wanted to introduce it here, because after all, when we talk about online, internet, we do have third parties. I mean, we have the service provider. And of course, if you go back to the origin in the software manufacturer and so on, and so as well as the platforms very much today, whom we know all too well, in terms of how they interact with all of us. And they too can block if they wish, such as the experience that Mr. Trump went through in regard to certain platforms in the United States, which ultimately blocked his own posting of his opinions. On this front, I would say that from a business and human rights angle, the private sector, including platforms, are being invited to adopt due diligence measures to have a look and see whether and how they impact on human rights. And the question is, are they adopting due diligence measures, particularly as regards cybersecurity? Secondly, you will hear from our other colleagues the evolution of codes of conduct evolved by the private sector, which means that it can adopt their standards, sometimes more than what is in the national law, or more than in international law even. And there again, the balancing act is to invite respect for basic rights and freedoms in keeping with international standards. Thirdly is the contractual relationship between users and business sector, service provider, and platform. You have a contract when you want to use something on the internet, which means that that contract may lead to certain types of actions by the platform originator. In other words, if there's a code of conduct which says no homophobic material, and there's a certain implied contract between you and the service provider and the platform originator, then you might be blocked in terms of your wanting to put information on the internet, precisely because it might be seen as homophobic in breach of the code of conduct of the private sector concerned. And on that front, as we were here, very much the issue also of what oversight mechanism can there be as initiated by the platform and or the service provider. And of course, we will hear the experience of some big platforms in a moment on this. Finally, I wanted to just sound a little note about the fake news claim, particularly by states, as a threat to cybersecurity. And this is one that is very much linked to all the laws that I just mentioned, because it is a recurrent claim in Southeast Asia that fake news are a threat to cybersecurity in the eyes of the state. And likewise, it means that they want to adopt all these laws, including criminal law, internet law, internet gateway laws, and cyber crime law or cybersecurity law to counter fake news. On this front, I want to note, first of all, that it's very interesting the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression recently made this, I think, wise observation. Fake news or rumors or the like tend to spread more under undemocratic regimes. In other words, if you have an open democratic government, there is less likelihood of the fake news spreading and being so numerous, precisely because there are other organic processes that cool down the fake news. In other words, different types of information, etc., that enable people to pick and choose instead of believing in the fake news or wanting to tap into rumors alone. So I think that's a nice introduction to the phenomenon whereby repression itself leads to fake news, while democracy opens the door to a variety of information that helps to temper down, reduce the availability and the number of fake news. So that's a first observation which I thought was very interesting, which we should bear in mind, and maybe we test it in Indonesia as well. The second one is, in the era of so many laws, decrees, emergency decrees and so on appearing,
Sorry, Prof, I have to, maybe we can save for the last, for the next questions.
All right, fine.
But it is really great explanations, and we have a really big picture how current regulations in terms of the cybersecurity sometimes misinterpreted by the government. The cybersecurity notion, I mean, it's misinterpreted, and it's really affected to our democratic situations. Internet access, the access of information itself sometimes limited and controlled by the government. Rachel and Profit is already explained more about it. And I will invite Alia and next Shalini to maybe can explain more about what is actually the cybersecurity regulation should be, since we heard from Rachel and profited that usually it's being the tools to quote-unquote criminalize, or it's have some effect to democratic situations, especially during this pandemic. So maybe I will invite Alia, and then next Shalini. Both, maybe you can elaborate more on 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah, I will invite Alia. Please, Alia.
Thank you, Kalintang. Am I audible now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here alongside a very great panelists, and Prophet and Rachel already provide a very comprehensive regional overview about the problems. And I will follow up from there by explaining more about the scope of cybersecurity and the common misunderstanding around cybercrime and cybersecurity. And in Indonesia, actually, the problem stems when there is a failure to make a distinction between cybercrime and cybersecurity, despite it being two different concepts. We oftentimes hear that, and these two terms are oftentimes used interchangeably, while in reality both cybercrime and cybersecurity have its own unique privacy and security implications, and addressing cybercrime and cybersecurity requires separate considerations of the issues and safeguards designed to address each unique privacy and security implications of cybercrime and cybersecurity. And as a result, most countries are now regulating both cybercrime and cybersecurity in one piece of legislation that is oftentimes criticized for its potential abuse by governments. Professor explained racist issue earlier, that it instead of securing the individuals, the devices, and the network, most of the time the Cybersecurity Act is used to potentially surveillance or to impose a government censorship in order to silence dissent or government critic. And this is actually what needs to be reminded to Indonesian government as well, that a good cybersecurity means and always comes back to protecting the individual, the devices, and the network. And what does it mean to protect individuals? This is actually closely related to how the pandemic COVID-19 has been underlining the dominant role of the internet in our everyday life, and with it comes a heightened cybersecurity risk. So a good cybersecurity policy sees a data protection framework and regulations, a comprehensive one, as a part and an important pillar of cybersecurity, meaning that it needs to protect the individuals at the level of their data, their personal data. So this is also the problem in Indonesia, because to this day, we don't have a comprehensive data protection act. It's still pending and being discussed in the House of Parliament. And this is actually comes back to the problem or the data breach case that Mbak Rachel raised earlier about how not having an adequate data protection regulations actually interfere with the cybersecurity framework in Indonesia. Is it because we've seen that the data breach that happened in 2021 alone, we've seen a lot of major data breach cases, such as the BPJS or the National Insurance Agency, the Indonesian National Insurance Agency, which happened to experience a data breach with the amount of data breach around 279 million of personal data. And also most recently, there is a breach from the AHAC applications controlled and established by the Ministry of Health, which contains sensitive data such as COVID tests, data of people who use the application. And this data breach has a wide range of implications, both to individuals and also to state itself. To individuals, we've seen that, for instance, the privacy violations and data exploitation by financial technology companies is a huge issue in Indonesia, and data from the Jakarta Legal Aid found that the majority of the victims are women who experience online gender-based violence, they face online harassment, and other aggressive debt collecting practices that was perpetrated by the financial technology companies. And how this actually relates to the data breach. And there is a recent report that found that illegal fintech applications built their user base based on data breach that was sold in the dark web for one instance. So this is a very interrelated component that have an implications to individuals, both financially or through their human rights enjoyment. And moving on to the second implication, not only that it affects individuals, data breach also affecting states. From other country experience, Korea, for instance, when there was a massive data breach on 2004, it was reported that the data breach actually really massive, that even the government is considering to issue new ID numbers to every citizen, costing billions of dollars. And Indonesia can take notes from other countries' experience, because this is providing us an example of what the future looks like if we do not put in place an adequate data protection requirement or regulatory framework. And the second point of what good cybersecurity is protecting the network, protecting the devices, which means that not only that it protects the personal data, but it also needs to secure the devices, implementing security by design and by default into how business are making the devices. And lastly is protecting network, which means securing network and also making sure that there is no unnecessary interference to the network. And I would like to give one instance that Prof. Bitet already raised before about how the COVID pandemic situations actually coincides with political clampdown in many countries, including Indonesia, and it affects how the government is seeing the network interference both by online censorship or shutting down the internet. And we see this as a threat to cybersecurity as well, because in Indonesia, for instance, we can see the patterns that the internet access shutdowns actually coincide as well with politically sensitive times, especially in Papua, and it continues, the internet access disruption continues during the pandemic COVID-19 in Papua, which is alarming, because we know that during the pandemic, access to internet access is actually have a life and death consequences. People turn to social media to seek information about how to self-isolations, how to seek health consultations by way of telemedicine. So if we continue to make an accessory interference to the network itself, it's actually a threat to cybersecurity as well as human rights. I think I will end it here. Lintang, over back to you.
Thank you, Alia. And maybe following up what Alia explained about how actually the cybersecurity should address or try to protect the individuals and not misinterpret the notion of cybersecurity itself, like mentioned by Prof. and Rachel. Maybe Shalini, I will invite Shalini to share more about the scope. Maybe you can add some things what Alia said about the scope and the definition of cybersecurity, and also maybe you can share in the cybersecurity terminology. We know the concept of critical information, critical infrastructure information, CII, and how we define or how we identify the critical infrastructure during this pandemic situations. Maybe you can also share about the strategy that Malaysia have or any international principles that you can share here. So yeah, please, Salini, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lintang. I think the other speakers have spoken more about the regional overview, so let me focus on the, like I said, on how the scope of critical infrastructure. Like in Malaysia, we have developed the Malaysia cybersecurity strategy for 2020 until 2024, where we have identified on the 11 sectors of critical information structures, or also we call it as Critical National Information Infrastructure, CNII, which previously, before the development of our Malaysian cybersecurity strategy, we have it called National Cybersecurity Policy, where we have identified 10 sectors only, but when we developed the MCSS, we have added one more sectors, which is trade, industry, and economy, to become its 11 CNII sectors. Like you said, basically there's no fixed definition on cybersecurity actually, where most of, if you Google it or you can find it, generally cybersecurity would be referred like the art of defending, protecting networks, devices, systems, programs, data, or other assets from an unauthorized access or malicious attacks by the perpetrator. And it also refers to the practice of ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So cybersecurity involves not only technology, basically, but it is a convergence of between people, process, and technology. If you refer to ITU, International Telecommunication Union, they define cybersecurity as the collection of tools, policies, security concepts, security safeguards, guidelines, risk management approaches, actions, trainings, best practices, assurance, and technologies that can be used to protect the cyber environment and organization and users' assets. So basically, if you look, cybersecurity actually it covers the whole environment, the whole concept, because it is a multidisciplinary, it's a horizontal, and it covers all domains, be it sea, land, air, and as well as the cyberspace itself. So like I said, in Malaysia, we have 11 sectors, which we have identified. It's like national defense and security, banking and finance, information and communications, energy, transportation, water, health services, government services, emergency services, food and agriculture, as well as trade, industry, and economy. So all of these sectors are critical since they own virtual and physical assets, systems and functions that are crucial to nation, that any disruptions and incapacity would have a harmful impact on national economy, image, defense and security, government capability to function, public health and privacy. So in relation to this pandemic situation, definitely every state, I believe that every country would give more focus to the health services or health sector. As in Malaysia, health services, of course, is one of the critical infrastructure sectors. And we also have come out not only with the strategy, but we also have SOPs, standard operating procedures, which is reviewed time to time to contain this pandemic, to manage this pandemic issue, as well as we have a national policy and procedure in managing cyber crisis that has been formulated to ensure that cyber attacks and cyber incidents are being managed proactively through a coordinated approach at the national level. And cybersecurity also needs a whole nation approach where not only the government role, but it needs the whole nation, which is public, private partnership, academia, civil society, everyone who are in the environment needs, it's like a team to protect our cyberspace. So in this, when you have a strategy, it will give a clear roles and responsibilities to every stakeholders, so they would know what to do, and they have a clear roles to act and how to manage, especially when it comes to this pandemic situation where it is an unprecedented event, where this is like not our everyday situation that we face. And we also know that during this pandemic, of course, the cyber criminals does not idle. They become more advanced. They take these opportunities during this pandemic to multiply their actions every day. So that's where I believe that cybersecurity is like the whole nation approach, not only the government responsibility, but everyone's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Salini and Alia. It's really that's the maybe for me it's quite a new information or about the cyber security. It's supposed to be protect the individuals, and how the strategy it's supposed to be have a multi-stakeholder approach, because as Salini mentioned, that cybersecurity is the responsibility is not only government, and I think maybe later we can like elaborate more or explain more about the reflected from the Malaysia, how they build, how the Malaysia built the strategy, and maybe next I will invite Mr. Andy, Mas Andy. He's from the Facebook advisory group. So maybe specific questions for Mas Andy. You can also add what is actually the oversight board, Facebook oversight board. Maybe some of the participants or not really familiar with this, and the specific question for Mas Andy is what is the oversight board Facebook Asia, and maybe you can give us the highlight about why actually the platform like Facebook is need oversight body, and how the responsible that the business sector platform should have regarding the protect the informations, and also because most of the for example, for example, the platform that become a center of information currently is social media, and especially the center of information about the COVID-19, and it's also used by official organizations, official governments to distribute or disseminate some information. Yeah, maybe you can share a little bit more about the responsibility of platform and the cases that might be oversight board have currently. So I will give the floor to Mas Eni.
Thank you, Lintan, and thank you, Elsa, for inviting me to this important discussion. Let me just make clear from the beginning that I don't work for Facebook, so I'm not here to explain or to defend Facebook's operation or record on the question of fighting the pandemic, fighting the misinformation regarding pandemic. But I am, the oversight board is a supplement to what Facebook is trying to do to moderate content. For the topic of our discussion, was moderating content that has to do with misinformation. The power to overrule Zuckerberg, and we have done it. Give you the numbers later on. The boards, the oversight board's governing instruments establish institutional, functional, budgetary, and personal guarantees so that members can act with complete autonomy from the political, economic, and reputational interests of the company. Our decisions to uphold or reverse Facebook's content decisions are binding on Facebook and Instagram. And in addition, the board offers policy guidance that Facebook must consider and respond to publicly. This means that recommendations lead to broader changes in Facebook's conduct. Many of these deal with the most complicated questions of content moderation and do so in a transparent manner that allows increased public scrutiny. Last month, the board, we reached the milestone of receiving 500,000 user appeals from around the world. We have accepted 18 cases today, and we made decisions on 14 of these. In 10 of these cases, we actually overturned Facebook decisions and reinstated the user's content. These cases are globally diverse, with more than half coming from Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Now, as part of the 14 decisions we have published so far, we have issued more than 60 policy recommendations, and Facebook has committed to action on 31 of these. So the board is actually having a real impact on Facebook's community standards and content moderation practices more broadly as part of this policy recommendation. Among the cases that we have reviewed so far, we have actually twice dealt with the challenge of COVID-19 misinformation, which I will speak to more in the next round. But each case is unique, and the board is already learning that context is key. We have to consider the rights of the users who are posting content, not only freedom of expression, but other human rights like the right to health and the potential harms of that content remaining on the platform. Many people go to Facebook as a resource for current information and updates on the pandemic. They also use the platform to share this information and their perspective with others. Ultimately, the challenge for these platforms with regards to COVID-19 is ensuring accurate information, limiting the spread of misinformation, and respecting user rights. The board is going to continue holding Facebook accountable by giving more scrutiny to its initial decisions and bringing further transparency to what has been a very opaque process. I'll end on that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andy, to share about what is the oversight body of Facebook, and it's really interesting to see how actually the business platform or a technology platform is also need oversight, especially for from civil society or the user itself, to make sure that the process is transparent. And yeah, it's a big number of cases that oversight body can receive. I hope all the teams have a time to rest as well when the process the cases. But yeah, maybe some of the participants just know as well about this oversight body, because yeah, it's true how the social media become a really center of information to circulate the information and knowledge as well regarding the pandemic informations. And maybe we still have like less than an hour, and I think I have like a questions before we start the question and answer, but I want to inform that maybe we can keep it, the information quite short, because we have comprehensive information in the first round. We have like, okay, we have a challenge regarding this cybersecurity and its impact to the democratic, and Shalini and Alia already share about what is actually the cybersecurity supposed to be. And maybe I will invite Rachel and Prof. Fitbit to explain more about how actually we can ensuring human rights within cybersecurity. Maybe Salini already shared about, in Malaysia, they have like a strategy and a policy and how actually we can like really implement the human rights approach, whether it's only in the legislative or with the technology field as well. And so we can like give, we can looking for another field to really mentioning the human rights on the cybersecurity issue. So maybe I will invite Rachel first.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lintang, for 1 million questions. I would like to share some of Forum Asia recommendations, and I'm sure Fitbit and other participants and speakers can deep dive more to it. But to ensure human rights principles within cybersecurity, definitely we need to address digital divide. It is for a fact that now the access of internet is a very exclusive access, especially when it's can be utilized by marginalized community, women and girls, and I'm talking about refugee, migrants, LGBTIQ, etc. And to achieve the digital, to address the digital divide, definitely we need to provide digital literacy information that are human rights centered, especially to young people, to be able to fact check, to be able to protecting their data, etc. And then second recommendations that Formation would like to provide is to understand that data is the new oil. It has a high value of economic interests, and therefore robust data protections policies, which also includes protections of freedom of expression, assembly associations, is needed to ensure human rights approach in cybersecurity. To add, with the harassment of human rights defenders that we witnessed in the past months, especially because of the pandemic, ample protections for human rights defenders need to be made available in Southeast Asia countries. We need to start talking about human rights defenders protections law and mechanism to assure that there is no chilling effects when someone wants to raise their voice. Finally, we need to go back to the 17 principles on utilizing digital tracking for COVID-19 as issued by WHO last year. Some of the principles are very relevant with our conversations today. First of all, accountability is needed by government and also private sectors who are managing data. Second, we have to make sure that all data mining and for data utilization process need to uphold voluntariness principles. So everyone need to have an informed consent when utilizing apps to trace their movement, and also other measures that being done online. And we definitely have to ensure the principle of necessity and proportionality. And last point is the importance of independent oversight. I think I have shared about the Facebook Oversight Board, and that's very important that both the public agencies and the businesses that develop, operate digital proximity tracking applications or use information have an independent oversight bodies. to making sure that data protections policies can be implemented. And very final point from my side is on engagement of civil society, especially the most marginalized group, within the creations of ecosystem where human rights is at the core in the cybersecurity. So I will stop there and would like to also hear from other speakers on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Maybe Profit can also add some more points about how ensuring human rights within cybersecurity, especially or any standards that we have to develop the cybersecurity policy. We heard from Salimi that actually the cybersecurity policy usually have to include multi-stakeholders, and how actually it's supposed to be also give more agency to minority groups, like Rachel mentioned, to contribute, develop the policies about cybersecurity. So please, Profit.
Thank you very much for all the comments. I'm also learning a lot, and I thank you very warmly. That's the whole point of participating, to share and cross-learn. First of all, to emphasize again that if we're talking about cybersecurity, the preferred understanding is that it should be about the protection of ourselves and our systems, meaning particularly the individual. And that has to be contradistinguished from protection in the eyes of the state for its own perception of national security. And I think this divide is quite evident because the cyber security laws arising at the moment tend to be the latter rather than the former, protecting the state's own security rather than the individual security as regards the computer system and the data concerning the individual or the mini group. Secondly, we have international standards that can help, and as has been said, there's a link between human rights here and security and international standards, particularly freedom of expression, which is both to give information as to receive information, to share information, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, right to privacy, particularly data protection, very importantly now. And these rights, actually, on expression and privacy, they are not absolute. They are constrainable, they can be limited. But there are criteria in international law that come into play. And the three which are usually known are legality, necessity, and proportionality, plus non-discrimination and universal standards. Meaning that if whatever law or whatever action the state wants to take to limit freedom of expression and privacy, the state has to justify itself by producing a credible, reasonable law on the basis of legality, not just discretion, and prove that it's really necessary according to the risks, real risks we hope, and thirdly, proportionality to the requirements of the situation, together with non-discrimination. So those standards help in terms of enabling us to see the relationship between the various rights, as well as the relationship between the individual, the group, and the state concerned. Thirdly, I think it's also important to differentiate, as was voiced earlier, between cybersecurity and cyber crimes. And if we want to clarify well the notion of cybersecurity to mean protecting our system, ourselves, our data, rather than the state's system, the state data, the issue of crimes has also to be addressed somehow, and there are standards. The main convention internationally on cyber crimes is the Budapest Convention, which has now been extended by a protocol, and it gives us a certain structure in terms of what national law should look like if it's to address cyber crimes. And it lists about 10 activities which can be criminalized, should be criminalized by the state. And that provides us with a sense of specificity and clarity as to what type of actions should be prohibited, rather than just giving the state a lot of discretion on grounds of national security to define what it wants to classify. And in the Budapest Convention, it evolved in Europe, but it's open to accession by any countries. And we have Asian countries that are parties, including Japan and Sri Lanka. US is a party as well. And what I said this morning at another forum was that I'm now willing to invite Asian countries, particularly Southeast Asian countries, to ratify. Why? Because it provides us with a structure to measure what we should be doing in terms of specifying the crimes rather than generalizing national security to constrain human rights, so to speak. Now, some of the examples of the cyber crimes, which are internationally recognized as crimes which should be prohibited, which help to clarify the type of law we need at the local level, include illegal access, particularly to computer systems and data, illegal interference with data, etc., computer-related forgery, fraud, child pornography, infringement of copyright, aiding and abetting on all those issues, and most recently, the listing of criminal acts on cyber to be prohibited also include information or maybe speech that is based upon racial discrimination and xenophobia. So that interlinks also with the international standards, particularly the Covenant on Civil Rights on incitement to hatred in relation to discrimination and violence, as well as the Convention on Racial Discrimination, which prohibits hate speech inciting or based on racial discrimination and as to xenophobia.
Thank you, Prophet.
That's my take, and so maybe we should provide the demarcation well, so as to have clarity on this, rather than let the state define everything. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Prophet. So we have 30 minutes left, and I will take some questions and ask to the speakers. And first, I have a question. There is a question. My question to the panel: when the governments are playing the main roles in public relations and educating the people, how should the ASEAN governments collaborate and protect the ASEAN for secure and safe cyberspace for ASEANers effectively? And if there are cyber threats caused by the government, how should they handle for that? Maybe I will invite Salini. Maybe you can also share from your experience as a representative of government from Malaysia, and how actually the ASEAN government collaborative might be helpful, or is there any kind of initiative about it to develop like the cybersecurity strategy for ASEAN, for example? Maybe you can elaborate more about it.
Okay, thank you, Bintang. I'll try to answer as best as I could. Basically, like in ASEAN, of course, we are working closely with other ASEAN member states. And when it comes to cybersecurity, actually, there are a lot of initiatives that ASEAN has put forward to secure our regional cyberspace. And among the initiatives that we have conducted, like Malaysia has now leading on coming up with a regional action plan for ASEAN's norms and metrics on implementing the 11 norms, which has been agreed by the United Nations on group of governmental experts on cybersecurity norms. So we're trying to do the metrics for every ASEAN country to list down or to stock take all the initiatives, domestic or regional initiatives that they could implement in terms of cybersecurity initiatives, where you can do parts like policy, capacity buildings, or other initiatives that relates to the operationalizations of the 11 norms. And if you ask me in terms of our national, on the national capacity or national initiatives that Malaysia has done in our country, of course, we are working together with all the multi-stakeholders. We are discussing and coming out with various initiatives, policies, strategies, and work together not only with public sectors but private sectors in securing our national cyberspace. We also have a very good relationship between private sectors and public sectors in terms of information sharing, and we also work together with the law enforcement agencies when it comes to combating the cyber crimes, or we are combating cyber threats, so that everyone is still secure to use the cyberspace. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe another questions, following up questions about if there's special unit such as maybe cyber policy, how effective its role in guaranteeing human rights in the cyber world. I mean, yeah, in the concept or in the infrastructure of cyber security actors, for example, maybe you can share like how the roles it's supposed to be to ensuring human rights principle in the cyber security policy. In which role do you think?
All right. Like in Malaysia, of course we have developed our national cybersecurity agency, NACSA, where we are the lead agencies for at the national level, that we are not only looking into the policies but also look into the monitoring, or we have a dedicated unit where they are monitoring the threats, providing advisories to the CNI agencies. And not only looking at the threats as well, but we're also conducting the awareness to the citizens on the importance of cybersecurity. And at the same time, as per the human rights, of course, we are aligned everything with our federal constitutions. We aligned everything with the domestic legislations, regulations, where the basic principles of human rights must be respected, and although there's rules or regulations that guarantee the principles of human rights, but you have to bear in mind that those rights sometimes it's not an absolute right, because of if you are not, if you go against the domestic legislations or international law principles, of course everyone is subject to the law. Not everyone's above the law, but these rights need to be aligned with the rules and regulations, and it's not an absolute right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Salwi, and that's why we need like a collaborative or multi-stakeholder approach to make sure and yeah, to give the discussion or the decisions is not harmful for specific groups or etc., especially the minority groups. And thank you, Salini, and I will take a questions for Mas Andy. What are some of the challenges to create awareness or train end user in cybersecurity? What could be possible solution and success story? Maybe it's about the awareness. Maybe you can share the recommendations that advisory group have sent to Facebook and how it's impact to the Facebook policies. And also, there's another question regarding the content. He said that it will be interesting for the country or jurisdiction to have content oversight body for any social media platform. But the idea is to use transparent content takedown mechanism, so that transparent mechanism rather than hiring hacker to attack the platform. So maybe it's 2 points. First, how the responsibility of platform to increase the awareness the user, the safetyness of the user when they connect to the internet, and also what do you think about the transparent mechanism, the takedown mechanism in government or in the country level? So, yeah, Mas Andy, go ahead.
Thank you, Lina. I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to answer this question, but I'll give it a shot. First, about building awareness in the social media platforms. Of course, the social media platforms have become the primary source of information for most everyone in the world today. So we rely on the information that we get on social media, and this is where, with regards to COVID-19 in our discussion today, the proliferation of misinformation about COVID-19, which is creating a huge problem for all of us, and of course a huge problem for the platforms, because they have to moderate the content, and we're talking about more than 1 million content that they have to look into every day and decide whether to allow, leave them up or take them down. I think the platforms, I know Facebook for one, has set up this community standards, and this is all well publicized and accessible, and people can check about what are the standards, and these are the reasons, probably in answer to the second question about transparency. The decisions to take down or to leave up contents are based on the community standards. Twitter has its own mechanism, but Facebook and Instagram, they share the same community standards. So they have the mechanism in place, but the question is that enough or not? Right? Because we are still seeing a lot of contents that should be removed, but they remain up there. But there have also been many cases where contents are actually legitimate, but they were removed. In fact, the 2 cases of COVID-19 that the oversight board handled, we found that the Facebook was wrong in taking down the 2 contents. The one is regarding the hydrochloroquine drug that was posting in France, a discussion about that, and Facebook decided to remove the content because they say it's could lead to harm, could be harmful. We, the oversight board, beg to differ. We looked into the case, we saw that, yes, it's not necessarily correct. There may be misinformation, but I think taking it down is a little bit too harsh, because this is part of discussion among health people, health experts, about the effectiveness of the different drugs. We have the same case here in Indonesia about a particular drug, and there was discussion, a big discussion. And the point is that I think that the platform should allow this discussion to take place, and maybe just put a kind of warning about that there is a discussion or there's a debate or this claim is being disputed. Going to Professor Vitit, 3 points on the three tests on this deciding whether the speech should be removed or not. I think proportionality is very important, and so we look into that case. Of course, we struggle, or Facebook struggles, the board also struggles in reconciling between free speech, the right of free expression, and the right to health living, the right to life. And this is always the reference that we use would be the international human rights law, and then we decide whether the Facebook decision comply or does not comply with human rights law. The second case in Brazil, again, there was a state agency in Brazil who says that lockdowns are not effective, but they prescribe other ways of actually preventing the spread of the virus. Facebook said this is in violation of the community standards. We look into the case, of course, we look into the context as well. And we decided that it was not a violation of the of human rights, because this is part of the discussion. And maybe, or we were saying that Facebook should instead put a kind of warning to this kind of posting. So content moderation is important, but going to the questions about transparency, that's also important. And we, the Oversight Board has made some specific recommendations to Facebook about its policy, about being more transparent, and even about the need to create a kind of center for information on COVID-19. And I think Facebook is, has already complied with some of the recommendations and is looking at the other recommendations.
Thank you, Mas Andy. I have to stop you there, and maybe I will invite Alia. Maybe you have any thoughts on this, and I will read some questions and also ideas from the chat box in Bahasa Indonesia. So, jika negara tidak bisa menjamin keamanan data warganya dan membungkam warganya yang kritis dengan ITE, apakah itu kondisi kemunduran demokrasi? Kalau terjadi kebocoran data misalnya, seperti yang ketidaksiapan sistem negara seperti kasus kebocoran data health card in Indonesia, apa yang seharusnya dilakukan dalam konteks cyber security? Maybe 3 minutes to answer this, ya.
Okay, am I audible, Kak? Great. So this actually comes back to the core problems about the misunderstandings about cybercrime and cybersecurity in Indonesia, and this is largely because Prof. Vito mentioned this earlier about the Budapest Convention being the only multilateral treaties that regulates about cybercrime, and the uninformed use of the Budapest Convention, the copy pasting of the articles in Budapest Convention to a non-member state and who are not bound by adequate standard of human rights protection and data protection regulations like Indonesia, because our ICT law is largely in line with the Budapest Convention about the cyber-enabled crime and cyber-dependent crime, and this would create problems. And in reality, we've seen how the over-enforcement of the cyber-enabled crimes enshrined in ITE law that is implemented in a manner that is inconsistent with human rights law standards, especially the three-part test, even though Indonesia has been ratifying the ICCPR and the requirement to integrate this very strict human rights standards, the three-part test into human rights restrictions in Indonesia already regulated as well in our human rights law, year 1999. It is still a problem in practice, and there are a lot of issues to unpack there. So, and this is related to the second question. I hope that I still have time, so I will explain briefly about the AHAC case. Okay, so Indonesia currently does not have a comprehensive data protection regulation, and none of the existing 46 sectoral regulations that regulate on data protection are really providing a clear guidance for data controller to actually implement privacy by design, privacy by default, or internalizing or operationalizing the security and technical and organizational measures in order to make sure the cybersecurity of the data. And so the problem is that our data breach cases has been continuous without clear-cut mechanism of accountability for the data control. There is a missing piece of aspect of the data breach in Indonesia, data breach cases in Indonesia. It is always focused on punishing the hackers, or not highlighting the obligation or responsibility of the data controller to implement those cybersecurity in order to mitigate the incident or to establish a recovery plan in order to recover well from the attack. And this is also leads to the problem that currently our cybersecurity bill, we don't have also a cybersecurity bill, cybersecurity act, I'm so sorry. And it's still not providing a human-centric approach and reflecting that the cybersecurity law should protect individuals, devices, and networks, and rather they are mirroring the problems in Thailand, for example, that is extensive surveillance. It allows online censorship and lack of the multi-stakeholderism that was explained earlier by Salim. I think I will stop here, Linda. Over to you.
I have to stop you. Yeah. We have hello. Yeah. I hope the connection is still good. Am I audible? Okay.
Okay, maybe we came to the conclusion of speakers. I'm sorry that I cannot answer all the questions that we have from the chat box. And hello.
Okay, so maybe we can come to the conclusion. I know eventually the 2 hours is not enough for us to discuss this topic, and I will invite maybe first Shali to give like any recommendations or the ideal situation to strong or the strong principle that we have to adopt when we define the human rights centric security. And I actually have maybe I will add some maybe you can give another insight about the importance to see business and human rights principle in the cybersecurity supply chains, and is it matters to us when we define the ideal situation of cybersecurity, since we know that so many hardware, several surveillance tools is available currently in internet technology. So maybe you can give a conclusion and little bit thoughts about the business and human rights, especially in cybersecurity supply chain. And maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, Lintang. Basically, what I understand about the ideal situation on the principles to define human-centric cybersecurity during pandemic is like human-centric cybersecurity is where the human factors be the key driver in cybersecurity, as human will always be the weakest link in the cybersecurity ecosystem. So educating people on basic security could cultivate a sustainable security culture, and cybersecurity industry development is a collaborative effort. It is a team sport that needs cooperation and approach from multi-stakeholders in cybersecurity, as well as every stakeholder, be the government, private sectors, civil society, need to play their roles in creating and implementing cybersecurity policies and decisions. And as for, like you said, in supply chain, another people expect that we should give perennial attention is cybersecurity workforce, where effective cybersecurity measures can only be implemented if we have the right people to manage. And cybersecurity talent shortage is indeed a global concern and not only happen in Malaysia. Like in Malaysia, with the launching of our MCSS and My Digital, the Malaysian government estimates that 20,000 cybersecurity knowledge professionals would be required by 2025 to meet the workforce demand from the industry. Although the technical and non-technical cybersecurity measures are widely available, but effective use will not be achieved if the end user lacks the required knowledge and skills to properly apply the measures. In fact, one reason why some organizations are having weak cybersecurity measures because of lack of expertise and awareness. Hence, this is where a security education, training, and awareness program comes into play. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Salini. So next I will invite Mas Andy to give a conclusion or closing statement. Go ahead, Mas Andy.
Thank you, Linda. Well, I think the message I want to convey is that we have this problem with misinformation on COVID-19, and the sense is that we have to do something about it. And then, so the government has been requesting platforms to take them down, and platforms have also been taking down content for misinformation. The problem is that they're making decisions by themselves, and there is no higher body to appeal to. And this is where the independent oversight board comes in. Not just for Facebook. I think even if the Indonesian government decides to have an agency that makes decisions about content moderation, there should be an independent oversight, and it should be credible, right? It should be really independent and credible, and then I think people will be fine, because otherwise the decisions would be suspect of representing the interest of government or the business interest of the platform. So having that independent oversight is really important in content moderation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, I will invite Rachel to give a closing statement.
Thank you so much, Linda. I think I just want to share that resonating our recommendations that we need to have a robust data protection policy, which includes protection of freedom of expression and assembly associations, as well as definitely assurance of implementation. However, in terms of addressing the cybersecurity, once again, we need to make sure that digital divide should be addressed, especially for the marginalized group and women who don't have access to internet as of now. We also need to ensure that protections to human rights defenders are provided in online and offline settings, because we see increased attacks to these groups. And these also include journalists that are providing independent coverage for what happened in the countries. And lastly, I would like to encourage all of us here to start documenting how the pandemic impacting human rights, especially in the context of cybersecurity, because the current COVID-19 pandemic is definitely a test case, and the new normal should really adopt protections of data and upholding human rights of people in online and offline sphere. So I'll stop there and really hope that we can carry on the conversation in the next opportunity. Thank you. And sorry, maybe just to add, I'm sure Alia will talk more about it, but Indonesia is currently also, the parliament is currently discussing about the data protections bill. I really think that we need to expedite the passage of this bill, but making sure that the bill consists an independent oversight body to process the data, because as and we have shared before, it is very important to have an independent data authority to ensure protection of data. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I will invite Alia, maybe only, short and strong sentence to close for the closing statement. Yeah. Go ahead, Alia.
Thanks, Lintang. This is actually a little bit promotion, but ELSAM has another session after this about data protection, so everyone feel free to participate in that session to learn more about data protection in South Asia. Before giving the closing remarks, I would like to very briefly answer the questions about the surveillance tools that was mentioned earlier, the integration of these human rights principles. I think it is really important in light of the recent Pegasus scandal around the world, and I think the business and human rights principles pose an important role to fill the governance gap, especially when countries have no data protection regulations and surveillance, comprehensive surveillance law mechanisms. And Prof. did mention earlier about the importance of having human rights due diligence on this. And in reality, this could mean that a company should do a human rights impact assessment to countries that would like to purchase this technology and banning sales to countries who has bad human rights records. And moving on to the cybersecurity, the very topic of this today's discussion, I do feel that cybersecurity is a constant challenge. There is no guarantee of 100% secure system, so resilience is the king, actually, the very important term that should be kept in mind for all stakeholders involved. So that what I would like to say is that we should not see cybersecurity law in isolation, especially one that adopts a state-centric approach. So rather, the government should strive, and all the municipalities should strive for a robust cybersecurity framework that was involved and implemented in transparency and with public participation in it. I think I will stop here, Kalintang, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so maybe I will invite, I will invite Prof. Maybe you can give us the strong quotable for a closing. Yeah.
Very quick, thank you. Thanks everyone. I've greatly enjoyed and learned. Number one, there is no substitute for an educated population, who can discern, critically analyze, and choose what to believe, together with the need to eliminate online gap. Secondly, there is no substitute for plurality of information. All the more so because repression and monopoly of information themselves breed rumors and fake news and fake national security. Thirdly, let's be open to counter-speech as well, and not forget that peers reacting to protect on the internet are also important, particularly to protect victims who are marginalized or harmed on the internet. 4, let's opt for data protection law, which is compliant with international standards. 5, let's opt for access to public information law that is compliant with international standards. For example, the Indonesian law that opens the door to access information on the environment, together with data on environmental impact assessment. 6, the need for oversight, independent oversight, And in regard to the private sector, of course, to scrutinize its own practices, which might be on content moderation. 7, if in doubt, don't block necessarily, but warn. And don't forget also that we have a list of crimes which should be prohibited, for which there is no doubt, such as child pornography. And 8, let's enjoy together and abide by the international package of standards, including the Human Rights Package, ICCPR, UNGP, Guiding Principles on Business Human Rights, and the Budapest Convention. With that, we welcome very much robust civil society, robust multi-stakeholder partnership as not only a legal policy normative framework, but also as a caring, psychological, and empathetic response to the sense of being as humans. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prophet and all the speakers, and also the participants for the questions. It's really, the closing from Prophet, it's like a declaration or the principles that I think we kindly agree, and I hope these discussions will become, can contribute more when countries, especially Indonesia or Southeast Asia country that currently developing their legislation or the policies about cybersecurity. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for the speakers and the participants for this great sessions. And I cannot summarize all up because so many important statements in our sessions, but I hope this is not the end of our communications to discuss more about the cybersecurity. And yeah, once again, thank you very much, and I'm really sorry about the lack of to facilitate these sessions. And yeah, I guess hopefully we are stay safe and stay healthy. And thank you very much all.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, bye.
Everyone, bye from Bangkok, keep safe.
Bye from Jakarta as well, yeah. And we'll give back to the admin, saya IGF admin. Thank you. Once again, thank you, and very sorry for my internet connection.
Thank you.